Well, we'll be joined currently by Mr. Adam Scott Bellos, CEO of the Israel Innovation Fund. Mr. Bellos, now, of course, the ground offensive, as far as the IDF is concerned, has begun a few days ago. They're already making repeated incursions into Gaza. But the criticism about the Israeli action so far is that more than 10,000 Gazan residents are now reported killed, that the Israeli response has been disproportionate. How do you respond to that criticism coming your way?
First of all, thank you for having me. Second, obviously, we cannot take the numbers that are being released to be legitimate, given that the only source of the numbers are Hamas.
Yes.
Second of all, one of the things that I thought was very interesting that you just showed was how Gaza has been built twice, one on top, one on bottom, and not one shelter was built for the Palestinian people, given that we know that Hamas would be expecting to come into conflict with Israel. So I'm going to ask the same question that I keep asking on every single news program that I'm on. If a humanitarian crisis is being created, okay, and Hamas attacked and infiltrated Israel on October 7th, killing 1,400 people, raping women and children, and setting them on fire alive, okay, shooting up the Nova concert, holding whole families hostage, taking over 200 people hostage, okay. In addition to that, blocking the exit for civilians to leave the Gaza Strip from the southern border. How is Israel responsible for any type of humanitarian crisis that is being created as a result of the declaration of war that was October 7th on the Jewish people globally, on global world Jewry? That is what I need understanding. That's my response to that. If you start a war with somebody, you have to expect a response. As my father used to say to me growing up, if you play rough, expect to get hurt.
Mr. Bellos, while striking some of these underground tunnels, the IDF has also attacked the Jabalia refugee camp. Now, the Palestinians have, of course, come out with estimates of the casualties of their own. There are disputed numbers now, but the damage that's been inflicted on that particular refugee camp by way of casualties is known to be very high indeed. What's your response to the criticism there as well? Because a lot of children are known to have died in that particular attack as well.
First of all, any loss of life, especially children's lives, is a terrible tragedy and should be mourned. And I mourn the Palestinian civilians and refugees and children that have lost their lives in this conflict due to what Hamas got the Palestinian people into. It is a fact that this gentleman, Barry, this terrorist leader, the Southern commander, if I'm correct, unless it was the Northern Command, please excuse my ignorance on the issue, was hiding amongst civilians, which again gives credence to the claim that Hamas is using civilians as human shields and children as human shields. It's a terrible tragedy. At the same time, this attack did or caused a very big blow to the Hamas military infrastructure. So at the same time, one has to ask, do we take into account the lives of our enemies, civilians, in order to enhance the safety or hinder the safety of our people? And when it comes to that choice, we are always going to be making the choice to enhance the safety of the Israeli and the Jewish people. So while it's an absolute tragedy, the loss of life, and I say that with all sincerity, there's a war going on and a war has to be fought, and our people need to be protected. And there's something called preferential love.
Mr. Bellos, how long do you see this continuing? Because Israel's stated objective in this entire matter is the complete obliteration of the military capabilities of Hamas. Now, if Hamas is an organization that is very deeply embedded within the civilian population of Gaza, do you see this as a long, drawn-out conflict? And how does Israel now distinguish between who's a civilian and who's a combatant or a terrorist in this particular instance? Does that not, therefore, leave room for more casualties and more civilian casualties as well?
There will always be casualties in war. There will always be civilian casualties in war. That is war. It's unavoidable, unfortunately. And that is the tragic reality of war. And it's a tragic reality to showcase the ineptitude and the incompetence of the United Nations, which is extremely important to highlight. Okay, extremely important to highlight here. The fact is that this conflict will be drawn out. We're past the idea of a shorter conflict. I believe this war has now gone on longer than the Yom Kippur War. we're looking, Benjamin Netanyahu got on television and said, this is our second war of independence. And I think that means that anything is on the table right now. In terms of the eradication of Hamas, you're dealing with two problems. One, an organization, and two, an idea. The radical Islamists idea. The idea that Islam is the supreme ideology of the world and it should be governing the entire globe. And that will also have to do with the eradication of Iran. And as you saw, the Houthis got into the conflict yesterday. Their announcement was quite comical. It reminded me of an Oompa Loompa in Tim Burton's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory screaming and yelling. I was rather entertained by the announcement yesterday. It was hard not to laugh. At the same time, we're being drawn into a regional conflict. Hezbollah has been very quiet in the north, but they're still firing on the north of Israel. So, when this war started, I said shortest 3 weeks, longest 3 months. Now I'll say this: shortest 3 months, longest 18 months. And I hope I'm very, very wrong about that. I hope that my estimates on how long or how short this war is. Listen, if it were up to the Israeli people, this would be over tomorrow. Okay, there is a reason why we were so not slow, but methodical on how we put troops in Gaza. And it was because we were extremely concerned for our own loss of soldiers' life, of military personnel's life.
Sure.
Because we take every single life to be held.
Mr. Bellows,
very,
I just need to interrupt you for a moment because you talked about the fact that this war is a long, drawn-out one, and that's exactly